Hey, David Brewster here with New Brewster's Millions of Rants, and this is the MXR Clone Looper test drive. And I recently picked up an MXR Clone Looper looping pedal, and it's very inspiring. Definitely a welcomed addition on my little pedal board here. And this pedal is going to replace my old TC Electronic Ditto Looper, which I've had the Ditto for about 10 years or so. And there's nothing wrong with the Ditto. I'm definitely going to hang on to mine. But I definitely like the layout, and the sound quality, and just the features of this newer, MXR Clone Looper. For one thing, you've got two buttons instead of the single button, like the Ditto. The sound quality seems a little better and enhanced. And like I said, it just has some features. It does have a speed and a reverse feature, which I'm probably not going to use those that much. But I do practice using loop pedals a lot. I don't really perform live using them very often. I have, in the past, kind of few and far between. But I definitely utilize looping in private, for practicing. Like maybe I'm working on a certain scale or mode, or I'm trying to play over a chord progression, or maybe I'm writing a song and I'm coming up with some ideas. It's very handy just to have that looping pedal, play chords and progressions and stuff behind you. So if you have questions as far as how to use a loop pedal, or maybe how to incorporate one in your rig, this episode is totally for you. So here's the pedal in question, the MXR Clone Looper, and you can see the layout's really nice and sleek. You've got two foot switches and buttons right there, one for record and dub, the other for play and stop, and it's so nice to have separate foot switches, for record and play or stop. That way you don't have to do that quick double tap like you do on the Ditto and other loop pedals. There's your volume control, which that's also a button, and that actually basically initiates the speed or reverse features on here, which I don't think I'm really going to use speed or reverse. I'm really just interested in using this as a looper. But then there's your inputs and outputs. There is an expression pedal input. I think you can actually connect that to a tap tempo button that Dunlop makes, and I think there's like a time stretch feature for your loops. If you need to speed them up or slow them down a little bit, I think you can do that. And then here's the Ditto Looper, and you can see size-wise it's really not that much difference in size compared to the Ditto, but it's wide, because it's this way. So this is going to take a little bit more real estate on a pedal board. That's the nice thing about the Ditto, is you can seemingly cram it in a packed pedal board, and this is going to take a little bit more space to kind of find a place, on a board. And then as far as what's in the box, which I always like to show this too, they do give you like a regular adapter, which is always nice. They used to never give those away. Now they started to include those. There's like the safety stuff and the MXR sticker, of course, and the little footies. So there's not much, in there. There's not really a manual. There's a quick guide, but the quick guide doesn't really cover the pedal itself. It's just kind of an overview of MXR pedals, like in different languages and stuff. So you do have to actually find the manual or directions online. But that's kind of what's in the box of the Clone Looper. So before I get carried away and I start jamming and demonstrating this loop pedal, I want to share this image with the current state of my pedal board here that I use on my channel. And this is just my little late night lessons, Metro 16 pedal train pedal board. I have a ton of pedals. I have a much larger, mono pedal board. that's just stocked with all kinds of stuff. But you are going to notice I haven't shared an image like this for a while. You're going to notice some changes here. I am using exotic pedals on this board, the SP compressor and EP booster, also the clone looper, the little mini, blackjack chord tuner, and also the mini ISO brick from MXR, the power supply. Great little pedal board. I mean, it's stripped down just to the bare essentials, but it sounds great. And as far as a brief history of looping and layering and the sound kind of manipulation, a lot of this traces back to Les Paul. So if you want to point your finger and blame somebody, blame Les Paul, because really Les Paul, for guitarists, recording, overdubbing and all this stuff, I mean, he definitely was a pioneer, big time, not only performance-wise, on the guitar, but also sonically, as far as the way he recorded, kind of pioneered overdubbing, layer, sound on sound recording. His famous Les Pulverizer, kind of had this tape echo kind of looping, ability. And keep in mind, this is long before digital. This is back in the 50s and stuff. But Les Paul definitely is the main influence, I think, as far as, getting guitarists and musicians thinking about this and using this looping and layering and sound on sound kind of approach. As far as guitarists and musicians known for layering and the sound on sound looping, performance, I just mentioned Les Paul for sure, one of the pioneers of this, big time. Also Terry Riley, a composer, he recorded and composed The Gift in 1963, and that used audio kind of sampling and layering and stuff like that. And also Robert Fripp, from King Crimson. Robert Fripp and Brian Eno, worked on a pair of albums together. And they were exploring this. That would have been in the 70s. And of course, Robert Fripp with his famous Frippertronics, looping and layering device. It's really interesting. But here's an image with a whole bunch of different musicians known for looping, layering, and this sound on sound idea. Now, how to loop. So this seems like it would be really basic and self-explanatory, but I've had a lot of people ask about this. Students and friends and complete strangers, how do you loop? Like, how do you get clean loops where it's in time and it doesn't, fall out of sync or crazy, shifts or whatever? How do you get it to where it's in time and it sounds right? And that's hard. So obviously, it's all about the button press, like when you step on the foot switch. And you're going to basically hit it twice. That first press, if it's on the downbeat, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, you want it exactly on that downbeat. You want to start the recording part of the loop, right in time. And then the second button press or foot switch, hit is really important. And it's also going to feel a little weird because you're probably really used to hitting things in time, right? But you're going to want to basically hit that button, it's not even seconds, it's fractions of a second, milliseconds before that 1 comes around again. You're going to basically end your loop so that way in time it's, it's playing rhythmically in time. And that's hard to do. And that's probably one of the things you're going to practice, initially, a lot, is just sitting there trying to get, loops and everything in time to where it's even and it flows right. But here's a really basic image kind of showing you, once you get the loop going, then you're free to jam and solo and all kinds of stuff. You can start playing around with harmonies or whatever. It's really a fun world, but you definitely have to spend time like learning how to loop. So as far as what I played during the opening jam, spoiler alert, I'm right in the middle of recording a new instrumental music EP right now. Like the last week or two, I've been kind of, fleshing out some of the music, and I've been very inspired, writing some new ideas. And the Clone Looper, showed up a couple days ago, and I had the chord progression for what I played, during that opening jam. I had the chords already. I just couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do, over the chords. So I grabbed the Clone Looper, looped the progression, and then I just sat right here, for hours, just kind of fleshing out, jamming, trying some different ideas, playing leads, playing melodies. I started harmonizing and stuff. And as far as the chords themselves, I was basically doing this. Right, as far as that first chord, so that is an E minor 11 flat 5. tasty chord for sure. And then that changes to right here. And that's an E minor add 9 right there. And I love that progression, the E minor 11 flat 5. Moving into the E minor add 9. It's got a really nice little twist to it like that. Right? And then with the Clone Looper, I had that looping a couple nights ago, and I was fleshing out some ideas, and I discovered a few things thanks to the looper. And initially I was just playing around with like the blues scale, with a flat 5 over that E minor 11 flat 5 chord. And that works. But I also noticed like that's definitely bringing out a Locrian tonality, one of the modes from the major scale. And then when it changes to E minor add 9, then it's just kind of going back to Aeolian or the natural minor. You could also slip Dorian in there too, but I was just doing natural minor stuff. So let's loop this. Let's try to play around with this again, kind of recreate what I did during the beginning. So that first chord, so I'm going to loop it. Loop, right? And like I said, I discovered you could play Locrian over that first chord and then kind of shift into Aeolian. So let's play with that over that loop. And I'm just going to play through this real simple. So here's the first chord, with E Locrian, and then when you hear it change, I'm just going to shift to Aeolian like this. Practice is great with a looper where you can sit there in private by yourself, nobody can hear you, there's no crowd, there's no stage and lights and PA and all that stuff. It's you in your bedroom or basement or garage or wherever you practice guitar, and you're sitting there really fleshing things out, like what sounds good or works and what doesn't. So over that first chord, you can definitely use like the E blues scale, which has the flat 5. But you might want to save that regular B for when it changes to E minor add 9. That's why I was thinking Locrian might be actually the better choice. And then over to Aeolian, for that change, and just kind of hearing that little shift in the scales and tonalities, really ear-catching. But it's also really important to flesh that out and work on stuff like that. Really just sit there and loop and jam and sweat it out. Really fleshing out chord progressions, tonalities, scales, modes, scale and chord relationships, all kinds of stuff. Just sitting here with the Clone Looper the other night, I actually came up with the melody that I'm going to use for the song, and I played it during the opening jam. And I was just sitting here looping that, and I started playing with this melody, and I thought, man, that really seems to work, at least in my mind. But something like this. Basic, nothing crazy. There's no Sean Lane licks or anything going on in there, but it fits, it works. And my new music that I'm coming up with, it's mood music. It's mellow, dark, and kind of moody. Very little shredding, if any. It's going to be a lot of, melodic ideas and kind of mood music and themes and stuff like that. But anyway, using the clone looper and really fleshing out what I wanted to do in the song, it really helped me. It kind of helped me zero in on, oh, there's a melodic part, and oh, I can kind of hit some Locrian ideas and kind of shift into Aeolian. And it helped me kind of define what I was going to do in this tune. Last but not least, we're going to do a little shootout here. We're going to compare the MXR Clone Looper to my old TC Electronic Ditto Looper. And it may not be fair to compare a 10-year-old Ditto to a 2-day-old, clone looper. But we're going to do it anyway. And we're going to use that same riff once again, just to kind of listen and hear and see if we can actually hear a difference between the two. Honestly, with my camera and the microphone, you're probably not going to tell too much of a difference, just on camera right here. But I do notice like a slight difference or improvement, moving to the MXR from the Ditto. So here's the clone looper from MXR, with that riff looped like this. So there's the clone looper. Now we're going to switch over to the Ditto looper and we're going to do the exact same thing. So here's the riff. And there's the Ditto looper. Sounds pretty much the same. Definitely don't miss the double foot tap because that sucks. Sorry TC Electronic, but that's the worst thing about your Ditto is the double tap with your foot. But I don't know if you could actually tell a difference. I mean, audibly while I was playing I could hear a slight difference. It's mainly the playback. Like when it loops, records and loops, it sounds pretty much exactly the way it did when it came out of your amp. It's when you start playing over the loop. That's when you notice some of the little kind of glitches, in the matrix or whatever, where you hear these little like audio glitches and there's like clashes, between the, I guess it's the tone on tone kind of clash or something. But you hear that sometimes. You'll hear this kind of weird digital kind of sound. And when you kick the looper off and just play regular, it doesn't sound like that at all. But then with the loop looping, you hear those little kind of digital glitches sometimes. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Brewster's Millions of Rants with this look at the MXR Clone Looper test drive. And definitely a very cool pedal. It's going to stay right there on my pedal board. Definitely the Ditto is probably going to go in my other pedal board, the larger mono. Just kind of, maybe I might just put it in the bag or in the case just in case I need to use a looper or something. But using loop pedals for practice is really important. I think it definitely gives you an earful of tonality and the sounds of a chord progression. And if you're working on scales and modes and chord and scale relationships and jamming, maybe you've written a song, you're trying to come up with a lead part, or maybe you've made a lead part, you're trying to harmonize your lead part. It's great for working out harmonies and stuff like that. All kinds of stuff. So it's one of those pedals that you may not use every day. You may not gig with it. But just having one in your stash of stuff, in your studio or whatever is essential, I feel, because it's a great practice aid. You know, yeah, if you have a friend that lives down the street or next door that can come over and jam, that's one thing. But it's great having a looper for those late nights when you're just kind of farting around or playing, you know, with some different things, and you can sit there and loop it, and you can jam endlessly until the power goes off. You can just keep jamming and looping that same idea. It's really helpful. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Net Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.